I think that's where a lot of shame comes from, is when we're feeling something like lonely, and the voice in our head, that inner critic voice says, hey, well, if you're lonely, just figure it out, do something different. You know, the way you're doing things is wrong if you're feeling lonely. And like, what if that's not the case? What if you're actually just allowed to feel lonely sometimes? And like, what a game changer that is, to just be like, oh, like, I'm okay to be sad. I'm okay to feel betrayed. I'm okay to be lonely, and not have to fix it immediately, but to feel it enough to know this is how I can fix it. Right. And so being able to facilitate that in a Sunday setting is challenging, and it can be a little bit harder with a group, right? I'm doing a lot of stuff one-on-one right now, but having a group just also just allows for some additional magic to happen too, if you can just invite that in.
Welcome back to another episode of Leading Saints, and today I welcome in a good friend named Braeden Jensen, who is a therapist in Sandy, Utah, and has a really unique background of being a seminary teacher, a full-time seminary teacher in Utah, and then transitioning, feeling this call to help youth even more and more of a therapy realm, and went back to school, became a therapist, and now is helping youth. And so obviously with so many youth leaders out there, it's interesting to maybe better understand the psyche of youth, or what are experiences that youth are having that would be helpful to us, and how to, break through those brick walls they put up at times. And so talking to a therapist who works with youth and is doing this time and time and time again can really be helpful for church leaders. So we talk about feelings, right? But in a way of, how do we get youth to actually feel their feelings or identify their feelings, being more articulate in and aware of the feelings that they're going through, so that then they can get past them or process them. And how do we bring those into a church context, or a Sunday lesson, or during activities? Because the more we can connect them with their feelings, the more often we're connecting them to their soul, to their spirit. And obviously that's a phenomenal foundation to work from when talking about religious concepts, right? So you're going to appreciate Braeden's background, his effort in bringing grace into the lives of youth, and helping them get past the hyper-focus on behaviors, and really just finding connection, authenticity, and encouragement as a youth in these latter days, right? So here's my interview with Braeden Jensen. All right, Braeden. So you made the career change from being a seminary teacher. You taught mainly at Skyline High in Salt Lake.
Yeah, exclusively at Skyline.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay, you're all done. Nice. And you became a therapist.
Yes.
What were you thinking? What's the story behind that?
That's a good question. It's a good question, because I had a lot of people, when you're a seminary teacher, you have so much, like basically anyone that finds out you're a seminary teacher is like, oh man, that would be the most amazing job ever.
Yeah.
Like,
we're talking full-time, like for those outside
full-time,
of
yes. If you're outside the Utah bubble, here in Utah, it's release time. So students come over, from the high school during class periods, and man, we had like, 700, between 700 and 800 students there at Skyline. So it was super fun to get to spend time with them and get to know their hearts, and man, get to share so many things with them. And so anyone that talks to you is like, man, being a seminary teacher, like you're living the dream, man. Like it's great. And it was like, it really was. And so, making that transition like puzzled me even a little bit sometimes.
So was it just a calling from God, or like, what was?
Yeah, it was really, getting into seminary, and the further I got in that seminary journey, like if you would have asked me, I would have told you that I'd be like, hey, like 30-year seminary guy, that was the plan. And got about 5 years into it, and just realized that there was some different ways that I could help and dig in with people. And I started to notice patterns of what my students were experiencing. there's just some ways as a seminary teacher that you're handcuffed a little bit. There's boundaries in place and things like that for good reason.
Yeah, you're not a therapist.
I'm not a therapist. So
you are now, but
I would have students that would come and approach me and they'd bring up hard things, relationship problems or family dynamics and stuff like that. That's, can be challenging and was challenging for them. Addiction and things like that, like, real stuff that they're dealing with and wrestling with. And I just started to man, I wish I could help more, or I wish I could help differently. Seminary, you get really good at helping them understand the what and the why of the gospel. And like, I was like, man, like I really want to do the how part. Like that's the good stuff. So started exploring that with some friends who are therapists and just started asking the questions like, hey, what does this look like? What is this? What do I got to do? Cause I want to be able to help this way, just a little bit more deeply. And so, started that journey and did kind of both as I was navigating school. I was still teaching seminary. And so did that for a couple of years. And this is my first school year that I have not taught seminary, because I'm doing therapy full time and loving it.
So I'm curious, back in the day when you were that seminary teacher, what were how did these issues usually come up? Was it a kind of a comment in class that was a little off? Did someone hang out after and want to talk, or typically how did that happen?
Both of those are very real and normal experiences as a seminary teacher. Like, hey, I'm just hearing someone say something that sounded like, man, there's something behind that comment that they didn't bring all the way out. And so, that would be opportunities for me to have conversations with students sometimes. It'd be opportunities for me to have conversations with parents sometimes and just say, hey, heard this today and just wanted to check in on that and just, see what's happening there. But also students, I definitely tried to, as a seminary teacher, I kind of prided myself on being able to have a place where there was safety and there was comfort, and really no matter what your journey was looking like, I wanted you to feel good in my class. I think everyone deserves Jesus and like, that's what I was trying to do. So, if your journey didn't look perfect, then you could come to my class and be there and be in it. And I loved that. And I think it created an environment where people felt comfortable bringing up some of the hard stuff. So I would have students that would, hang out after class sometimes and just say, hey, I want to talk through this. And this is a big, hard, heavy thing. Another thing I did with my students is every semester, I started off this semester asking them to write me a letter and just having them be real in that. And like, whatever real looks like to you, that's what I want you to put in this letter. I would give them, 4 or 5 things they could include in that letter if they wanted to, like, tell me about your family, tell me about what you like to do outside of school and stuff like that. But then my last question would just be like, man, like, what else do you want me to know about like where you're at right now? Tell me about your relationship with Jesus and tell me about what you're navigating right now in that, and just, gave them an opportunity to be real. And I would give them about a half hour to write that letter in class. Like, it was important to me to give them time and let them feel and have them approach me in that way. And it led to lots of cool opportunities to connect with those kids for sure.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Even a church youth leader could do that. And I think this is a dynamic we be aware of. Like, obviously, you think of the typical youth experience in the church. Obviously, they have their parents, their bishop, their youth leaders, and the seminary teachers part of that. Even outside of, release time seminary is, usually every teenager has a seminary teacher that can be a mentor and someone who's like, well, I'm not comfortable opening up to my parents, my bishop, or my youth leaders, but this guy kind of seems cool. Maybe I could ask him a question, and create that safety.
Yeah. And again, that's really what I loved about a lot of people when they say, hey, it must be awesome being a seminary teacher. You just get to like study scriptures all day. I'm like, well, that's actually not my favorite part. But my favorite part is just that connection, like being able to be around, rub shoulders with, these awesome youth, just have fun with them. I feel like sometimes church and gospel and God, it can become so serious so quickly that it's important to remember what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah. Is there anything else that comes to mind? I love that letter ideas, because that creates a lot of safety, trust, things like that. Is there anything else as far as if you were coaching youth leaders about handling a classroom setting so that questions come up, concerns come up, or they just feel like, oh, I want to be there?
I think something that I just also tried to do was to let students know that I'm actually super open to learning from them. Like, I'm your teacher, yes, but I recognize that my experience is super different from yours, and I want to experience some of what you're experiencing. So I have to have my heart open to empathy a little bit and to be able to feel a little bit of what they're going through. But I loved this, especially with students who were just trying to navigate, LGBT journeys and things like that, and just wanting to understand them better. And I would, if they were willing, I had students who would share that with me, that hey, I'm this is how I'm feeling, and this is what I'm trying to figure out. And I would just say, hey, like, I'm going to do my absolute best as your teacher to, again, help you experience Jesus, because everybody deserves that. And like, that's what he's there for. If I do that in the wrong way, will you help me, like, teach me? Yeah. Help me understand. Like, I know that I have some things to learn from you. And so those were really sacred conversations to have with people, to just, man, like, I want you to teach me and help me grow on that for sure. Yeah. All
right. Well, let's jump forward to now you're in that therapist chair. Obviously, different dynamics happening, and you primarily work with youth. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I work a lot with youth. I work a little bit with everybody, but I would say that 75% of the clients that I see are somewhere between 15 and 25. So a lot of high school and college age kids that are just navigating life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, and I always, someone who's coming off the front lines of the battles of mortality, especially in the context of youth, like, I'd love to just ask, like, what generally are you seeing? What themes, what routines, consistent issues that come to the surface?
Man, there's a lot. I feel like there's obvious ones that everyone is expecting me to say right now, and those are real. There's a reason that those are the obvious ones. Okay, pornography is it's a big issue. Feelings of anxiety, depression are big issues. I think there's some underlying issues there that, just not understanding and being okay with emotion. I think a lot of our youth are just trying to figure out a lot of emotions and trying to navigate that, and that can be challenging. And I think that one of the reasons that is so challenging is because there's so many things these days that are encouraging our youth to not have to feel. When I'm feeling something uncomfortable, I'm feeling something not awesome, then I can fall into my phone, or I don't have to sit in the hard stuff. So I'm going to distract myself with just scrolling. I'm going to distract myself with pornography. I'm going to, distract myself in some other way. So a lot of it is honestly just helping them understand what they're feeling, what they need, and how to navigate that in a healthy way that aligns with their values and where they want to be.
Yeah. And it really is those, you have the stigmatized things of like pornography and such, but man, I often think back as I sort of witness my kids growing up and interacting in their stage of the timeline, that when I, as that age and I was going through a bad day, you just kind of sit in front of the TV and channel surf but it wasn't that enjoyable. It's like this random talk show. Here's they're selling something where this is like, it is so easy to numb these days, like even in
video games and like, man, there's so many things, and attention spans are slower and different. And like, man, like it's tough. It's tough navigating that as a teen, as with just not as much life experience. Like, man, this is the first time I'm encountering some of these feelings, and I don't really know how to go about it.
I'm curious, like that initial visit you have with youth, that because I could be wrong, but I imagine youth aren't generally telling their parents, I think I need to see a therapist, or usually it's like, well, my mom kind of told me I had to come.
My mom made me be here. It's kind of the same thing I heard in seminary sometimes.
Yeah, right.
Like I'm here because my mom,
the threats are
take away my phone or whatever. So here I am.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like, if that's where we're at, that's an okay place to be.
Is that typically how it starts? And then, or how does that first 10 minutes go?
I actually think that most people would be super surprised at how willing youth are to lean into something like that. We assume, I think we as adults, as parents, as leaders, as, whatever, we assume that, hey, these youth don't want to just jump into the hard stuff right away. But they do. They largely are ready for that and wanting that. I think it's something that they're craving, even if they don't know that they're craving it. So a lot of what I do, starting out with youth, is just getting them feeling a little bit, giving them some permission to feel. We'll often invite some different emotions into the room and let them interact with it a little bit. That might sound kind of strange in non-therapy land, but it makes sense. It fits. And it's just actually, yeah, that sadness that I just interacted with, it feels really familiar. That's what I'm experiencing a lot of the time. And just giving him a chance to feel that, and then going, okay, that's now we're really recognizing these emotions. We're recognizing what's going on. Now, where do we want to go from there? And I let them direct it a lot. They'll tell you what they need and what they want. Hey, I want to be able to deal with that in a different way when it comes up, instead of when I get sad, turning to video games or scrolling or oversleeping or whatever. I want to be able to get what I need there, and being okay with it. And it's pretty cool to see them start to self-direct that journey a bit, for sure. Yeah,
that's cool. Anything else about your experience, or just the things you see that you want to mention before we move on?
I think something that I see with almost all youth, once we get into the nitty gritty and we sit with things, a session or two or three, is the presence of shame from different places, that really affects how they're feeling their other emotions. And I think helping them see that and understand that is just a really cool thing. And it's interesting to see how many different places that can come from, and sometimes it's uncomfortable to acknowledge that, for these young people. Man, I might be carrying some shame because of a family situation, or because of, how my parents have approached this in the past. That's a hard thing to say. Maybe my parents aren't perfect and they make mistakes. That's hard. Or maybe, man, maybe I feel shame because of how church has been for me, and to, because I've had maybe not the best experience talking to the bishop about something that was hard to talk to the bishop about. Or maybe I've had a poor experience sitting in a lesson and having someone tell me that, just some of those things that are hard. Maybe someone gave you the idea that your worth is tied to what you're wearing or how you're presenting yourself. And, some of those messages that can be subliminal messages in church, and just seeing where that becomes a shame message that someone carries around, and then how that also interacts with the emotions that they're feeling and what they're trying to navigate.
Yeah. I mean, that shame is really, and it's sort of this abstract thing at times. It's you can't just take your body temperature and say, oh, you've got this much shame, and it's something we just swim in so much. When it comes to as you mentioned earlier, having youth just feel their feelings, getting at least be able to recognize them and grasp them. Because I think sometimes, the age-old frustration of, you ask youth how they're doing, they're like, oh, fine, or I don't know, or it's just a shrug or whatever. And a lot of that is probably that part of their brain, or just the maturity of life. They haven't gotten to that place where they can really articulate what is it they're feeling, even though there's a lot that they are feeling. And so helping them get to that place is probably a big step, right?
It is. We call that emotional literacy, right? Just being able to express that a little bit. I do an exercise kind of towards the beginning with most of my clients where I have them write down 10 positive emotion words and 10 negative emotion words. Now, it's kind of tricky because emotions aren't really positive or negative. They're just emotions.
Yeah,
but for that exercise, we put them in positive and negative buckets. And honestly, if I'm doing that with someone who's, 15, 16, 17, 18, they start struggling after like 3 or 4. Like I have enough words to say, happy, joyful, which is kind of like happy, and then it's like, oh, but what else can I feel that's even positive? And just reminding them that, hey, like confident is a feeling, and that safe is a feeling, that people would like giving them some of that language and helping them understand what that feels like in their body, what that experience is like to feel confident and what it feels like to be safe. And the same thing on the negative stuff. Now, people, honestly, they usually have a little bit of an easier time coming up with 10 negative emotion words. Those are the ones where we notice them more because they are more uncomfortable. And as, so most people will get to 5, 6, 7 of those and go, okay, like I'm doing a lot better. But even 5, 6, or 7, like there's a lot of emotions that are out there that generally feel negative. So just adding to their vocabulary, adding to their understanding of what those emotions feel like and how they can, again, navigate them in a way that lines up with their values and that gets them to where they want to be is an essential part of the journey for them.
Yeah. And I see that's really important where like maybe a high school basketball player, when he's on the court playing, he feels really happy. When in reality, that's confidence. He feels confident. Like, I'm actually doing something I'm good at, and so I feel confident. So helping them identify that's sort of like it's very empowering. And they're like, it helps them understand their world a little bit better. So, as they become more emotionally literate, I mean, what does that do? Does it just help them articulate their situation better, or do they suddenly just kind of break things up psychologically in their mind? Or
yeah, what that does is, man, when I'm not emotionally literate, when something comes up that feels uncomfortable, I'm going to find a way to deal with it. That's where some of those numbing behaviors or distracting behaviors come in. Whether that's the ones we've mentioned, scrolling, video games, pornography, whatever, I don't have to feel that anymore. But becoming more emotionally literate allows you to then go, okay, actually, what do I need here? What am I in need of? Because it's probably not 6 hours of video games. It's probably not staying in bed till noon scrolling TikTok. Like that's probably not what my body and my soul, my spirit need at this moment. So if we can help them understand and feel, then they get to choose. It gives them more choice in how to approach that and approaching it in a way. And I think, most kids, young adults would agree that they don't want to be on their phones all the time. They don't want to be, but they don't really know how else to handle it. So once they understand those feelings a little bit better and they have some ways that they can approach those needs in different ways. What I'm actually lacking right now is not a whole bunch of time scrolling TikTok. What I'm lacking right now is connection. Yeah. And I need that because right now I'm not feeling comfortable. I'm not feeling confident. I'm feeling alone. That's one of the ones that I think most parents would be jumping all the way back to the beginning of our conversation and those letters that I would get from students at the beginning of the semester. I think lonely is probably the word that came up the most as how youth describe themselves today. Yeah. And I think the natural inclination is to tell the youth, well, you wouldn't be so lonely if you didn't have that phone out. Put your dang phone away. And like we kind of come at it from just this logical, you're doing it to yourself kind of way.
Go call a friend. Go outside and play.
Figure it out. Go ride your bikes. And, but it's because, that's just what we're used to. But being able to have them understand, hey, I'm lonely and what I need is connection. And for me, connection looks like this. This is when I feel connection. So that's what I need right now. I need to go to mom and dad. I need to go to friends. I need to reach out to somebody and let them know that I need that connection.
So let's pause on this journey is what we're talking about. We're sort of on the therapist route or context. Let's shift all what we're talking about into church leadership context, whether it's youth leaders, bishop's office, like they could be listening. It's like, great, yeah, I can see the value in this, and that's why they should maybe see a therapist. But I mean, why should they care? Or what can they do with this on Sundays or during the youth activity?
Man, I think that it would be awesome for church leaders to really find ways where they can invite some of that feeling into their weekly stuff, their lessons,
and we're big feeling people, but we usually and I would call it a spiritual bypass. Like, it's the Spirit, the fruits of the Spirit are, and we kind of, if you're feeling somewhat positive, that means it's the Spirit, moving on, right? But there's maybe more to that.
Yeah, I think, something that I also like to do with clients, it could be something that you do in Sunday to start off a lesson and I think I've seen you do this, Kurt, is laying down a whole bunch of different pictures on the ground.
The floor checks.
Yeah, doing some floor checks. So easy, but gives people an opportunity to check in and be like, oh man, like you could throw a bunch of emojis on the ground and go, okay, what emoji feels the most relatable to you right now? Go stand by it. Then tell the person closest to you why you chose that one, right? And it's so easy. And it just invites feeling. It invites a little bit of vulnerability, and it allows the youth to practice safety with themselves a little bit there, right? And to know, hey, I can actually tell someone that I'm sad, and they'll receive it, and probably not hurt me or shame me or anything like that. Like they'll be there for me, and it's a powerful thing, and that's so easy to do.
Yeah. The floor check is especially, I've used this with youth audiences, like they can't help but talk. I mean, can you imagine a tactic that would almost force you to talk in a good way, right? And I'll plug a really simple way to do this in our context is I went to the distribution center. You can get I think it's called the Gospel Art Library or something. It's the book. It has all the pictures of the Old Testament, New Testament, Book of Mormon. It's all there. I think it's spiral bound, but I bought that. It's like $5 to $10 or something. I took off the spine, just cut it off, and now I have all these pictures of scripture stories, and you lay those out, and you say, maybe go stand by the picture that best represents your week, right? And man, it's amazing where they stand and just how vulnerable they get so quick. Anyways, I need to do an episode with you and your team of all these different, some sort of beginning kit of some of these activities, because they're so effective and they're so simple, like crazy simple to do, and they're really effective. Yeah,
it's awesome. And again, really, you're just looking for an opportunity to let youth feel those things for themselves, but then bonus points if you also can help them express it, right? If you can help them to say it out loud and share it with someone, because then again, they get to experience that authenticity, that vulnerability that's there. And then they also, fingers crossed, I think you can help manage the experience a little bit, but you want them to experience some safety there too. And making sure that help your youth understand what it looks like to receive someone's emotions when they're sharing them vulnerably, and how we can show up for each other in that way.
Yeah. And so it sounds like you're just creating space of maybe sort of just checking in with those in the class or those that you're leading. Like, what are you feeling right now? Like, did you get in a fight with your mom that you don't want to be here, and here you are, and you're, just not willing to talk about it, or and just being willing to hold space for that, right? Of being okay. Because when you mention someone will tell you they're lonely, you don't immediately jump to well, let's look in your, contact list. Let's find 5 friends you could call, right? But you're just taking a moment to be okay. Well, in this office, you can be lonely, and I'll just be here in your loneliness with you, and let's explore that, right?
Absolutely. I think that's where a lot of shame comes from, is when we're feeling something like lonely, and the voice in our head, that inner critic voice says, hey, well, if you're lonely, just figure it out, do something different. The way you're doing things is wrong if you're feeling lonely. And what if that's not the case? What if you're actually just allowed to feel lonely sometimes? And what a game changer that is, to just be oh, I'm okay to be sad. I'm okay to feel betrayed. I'm okay to be lonely, and not have to fix it immediately, but to feel it enough to know this is how I can fix it.
Yeah.
Right. And so being able to facilitate that in a Sunday setting is challenging, and it can be a little bit harder with a group, right? I'm doing a lot of stuff one-on-one right now, but having a group just also just allows for some additional magic to happen too, if you can just invite that in. And I know that as leaders, we jump in and it's like, hey, I prepared this lesson, and trust me, I have 7 years of teaching 20 lessons a week, probably something like that, 15 lessons a week, and not ever getting to the end of the lesson.
Right.
Like I would prepare every lesson knowing that I am going to get to anywhere from a third to half of that lesson. Yeah. And so we do the good stuff and then we bring that lesson in and have that lesson be more applicable now, rather than just, this is the lesson I prepared and I'm so desperate to share it with you. It becomes, oh, we have people in here who are feeling lonely, who are feeling stressed, who are feeling happy. Like, how do we bring this lesson in and have it actually be meaningful for them? And that's when you get to pick, like, hey, this third of the lesson that I prepared is the third that my class needs right now. Yeah. And I don't have to get to everything. They'll get it all, because like you said earlier, they've got bishops, they have youth leaders, they have parents, they have seminary teachers. Like, we're all teaming up on this thing. If they don't get the whole lesson on Sunday, then, they'll get part of it in seminary, and they'll get part of it from other places, and it'll be okay. And
where my mind goes, this may sound too abstract, and I don't mean it that way, but oftentimes we, as teachers, or if we're engaging with youth, since we're in that context, we come in with data points, like whether it's, we're in the Doctrine and Covenants right now, whether it's the translation process or this date and this location, and our goal is to get to the feeling point, because there's a change agent there, which is the Spirit, right? And so I think if we just sort of surrender that at times and just saying, like, where's people at? And maybe I'll put the data over here if I need it. Like, but if we can get them a place of feeling something, like the Spirit will teach them all the data points at some point in their life of those things. And those are important for context and to some extent. But again, I think that's kind of the theme we're going with this so far, is this concept of feelings. That's why we have the fruits of the Spirit, that it's important to tap into those. So,
yeah. And that reminds me of an experience that I just had relatively recently with my kids at home. I'm trying to be a better seminary teacher at home now that I'm not doing it full time. A lot of people assume that seminary teachers are great at come follow me, but come to my house, human? I will prove you otherwise. And so we've wrestled with it. It's hard, trying to figure out the right timing, all the stuff. But anyway, earlier this year, as we're jumping into Doctrine and Covenants, which for me as a seminary teacher has been the hardest, that's kind of the hardest chunk of scripture to teach, honestly. If other people would say otherwise, and that's fine. But this one was hard. And because there is so much content, you kind of get lost in all the details. At least I felt like that way sometimes. Earlier in probably January, when we were talking about Martin Harris and then the 116 pages that were lost, I feel like you can get into so much cool stuff about, here's what happened and here's why they were lost. And here's Joseph asking a bunch of times and all the things, and where did those 116 pages go? And here's how Nephi actually kind of this thing happened with Nephi where he actually kind of copied a lot of what was on there into his version. And so we didn't really miss, there's tons of details. And I just wanted to slow down with my kids on that. And we read Doctrine and Covenants section 3, where God is addressing Martin and Joseph. And all we looked for was, what does this help us understand and learn about God? That's it. Yeah. All the details, all the dates, this is how it happened, who took them, what happened, all the
the conspiracy.
It's fine. And that's, I feel like we just get lost, but it was so cool to hear my kids express oh man, God loves second chances. That's what I want my kids to know. I want them to know that much more than, where are these 116 pages now? I want them to know that God loves second chances. I want them to know that God is understanding of like where we're at, and like he's willing to teach us and willing to help us get better. And like that's the kind of stuff where when we're just willing to feel and concentrate on that part of things, I think just, man, I think connection can happen a lot more between us and God.
Yeah, that's powerful. Something changed for you, right? Like what, unpack that for us.
Ooh, man, a lot of things have changed for me. And I think that this was all part of what led me from seminary teacher into therapy. But I feel like the way that I approach the gospel has changed significantly over the last 5 to 7 years of my life. And again, this might feel like kind of a shift, but stick with it and we'll get back to how this ties in with everything else. But, growing up, I put a lot of stock into all the checkbox things, right? Mm-hmm. I wasn't even all that great at them, but I knew they were super important, right? And whenever I was falling short or perceived that I might be falling short, or I was frustrated with, not having answers to my prayers, it always came back to, well, if you followed the formula, mm-hmm. Then it would be working better, right? If you were in your scriptures every day, if you were praying every day, it would work better. And so the checkbox things for me just became like, this is how I know I'm doing the gospel well. And this is how, God's going to be proud of me, and all the things. Mm-hmm. And so, man, I would bargain a lot with God, and I would, just man, it's a way that honestly shame was able to invite itself into my life and talk to me a lot about where I was falling short. And it just made the gospel kind of a miserable experience in some ways. Mm-hmm. But then I had never planned on becoming a seminary teacher, but when I got there, it was like, hey, I won. Like
you did it.
Like I did it. Now I'm doing all the things. Like it's my literal job to do the gospel things. Uh-huh. Full time, like 40 hours a week, I'm studying my scriptures. I'm saying so many prayers a day. It's like goofy, right? Like man, I won. I got the ultimate like poser prize of now I'm doing everything.
A big fat star on your forehead.
Yeah. And so God's going to be proud of me, and I'm going to feel different and all the stuff. And it didn't change things. It didn't change things for me. I thought, man, now I'm really going to be able to be close with God. And now I'm going to, mm-hmm. and so it kind of hurt even more to be like, man, now I'm doing all the stuff. I'm following all the formulas for 40 hours a week or more. Right. And it's still not working. And I think something shifted in me a little bit when COVID-19 happened, back in 2020. That was a crazy time to be a seminary teacher.
I bet,
One Friday we're at school. The next week we are all online and teaching on Zoom, and I didn't know what Zoom was before then, all the stuff. Yeah. And I got home, and when I was in seminary teacher mode, I'm like, hey man, like I'm doing all the checklist stuff. I'm reading the conference talks. I'm kneeling and praying, and I'm doing all the stuff. And I would even look at people around me and be like, man, I wish that they were doing more of the stuff.
Yeah.
And
it's so easy. Just do it. Yeah.
I hate admitting that I even felt that way toward my wife sometimes. So I'd be like, hey, like I'm doing all the things, and like, I don't see you doing as many things. And like, I know that saying that out loud, everyone listening to this is like, well, what a jerk. And you would be right. That's fine. I'll take that on. But I think, coming home and being at home, like literally from March to like July, August of that year was super eye-opening for me, because what I saw was me doing all the things and not having it strengthen my relationship with God. And I saw my wife not doing all the things how I thought she should be doing them, and walking her life with God in a so much more effective way than I was. where she would turn to him often throughout the day, and rely on him and be in constant communication with him. And guess how many conference talks she read? Like none. and yet I was like, why is she better at this than me? Like, this is, it kind of rocked my world. And again, invited shame in there. Like, you should be better. You got to keep up. And I'm like, crap, like I'm already doing all the things and it's not working. And so like, man, how much more can I even do? I'm a seminary teacher. And it just like, I had to pause. I had to figure that out, because that was something that was really, really messing with me. And so there were a lot of things that helped me start to figure that out. I think experiencing Warrior Heart, which I know is, if people have listened to your podcast, they know about Warrior Heart. Experiencing that just helped me to just actually invite more authenticity into the relationship that I had with God. That again, going back to what we're talking about with youth, that I'm allowed to feel feelings with God. I don't have to pray and have it sound perfect and have it sound like everything's great all the time, because sometimes things aren't great. And I can go to God and say, hey God, like I'm mad. Hey God, like this hurts. It hurts that you're not answering me the way that I want. Like, can we figure this out? And that kind of conversation was something that I'd never had with God, even, through 30 something years of my life. It was like, man, like this was a new thing for me to just be able to like break those walls down and start to trust him, with my real self. And it's scary. That's a vulnerable thing to do. Because what if I do that and it still feels the same? Right. And it still feels not as authentic, not as, I don't know. What if it lets me down? What if he lets me down? And so it was scary, but being able to jump in to that has just changed things immensely. Some of the things that I changed were just, man, like, I think just letting God love all of me, even the parts that felt broken, was important for me. Something that helped me with that, actually, was worship music, that just like fills your soul with how God feels about you.
Yeah.
And that, I started to really dive into studying grace and wanting to understand more about who Jesus Christ is on that front. I feel over the last 4 or 5 years, we've heard that a lot more from the general church, just helping us understand grace better and understanding how much we need it. But just allowing that to be a part of my journey, was amazing, and just kind of testing God, not in that might sound bad, but testing him in that, hey, like, God, I feel like you're inviting me to take a big jump right here. And like, I'm terrified. I'm scared. Right. My wife and I felt that as we approached foster care, a few years ago. It's like, felt like God was inviting us into foster care, and that journey. We already had 4 kids. Like our house is nuts, man. Like it's on the outside that doesn't make a lot of sense, but being able to just being able to say, hey God, like we're scared to death. Will you catch us if we jump here? And you're still alive. And him responding, you'll never know unless you jump.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing, is like, I really have come to know that God's not going to always give us the reassurance that we want, because he wants to see us jump. He doesn't want to direct every little thing. He wants to see us jump, and then he wants to show us how he can show up for us. And the way that he showed up for my family is, a beautiful 4-year-old boy that we have now that, is part of our family. And so now we have 5 crazy kids. And has it been super hard? Yeah. Is there a reason that it was super scary? Yeah. And now I know more about God, And so that continues to change my relationship with him and change the conversations that I'm having with him. And just so many things like that. Jumping from seminary to therapy. Those are hard things to just trust and fall into God with. And that's, I think I want to help people experience that.
Yeah.
To change it from a relationship of transaction, a relationship that's driven by shame, to something that actually allows for relationship with God and Jesus Christ. And as we experience that relationship with God and Jesus Christ, the healing that can come from that as we see who and how they really are.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is like, there's sort of this moment where we have to step into a space of surrender and just say, oh, it turns out I can't control it all with my habits and routines and behaviors. Though, at the core, those things are beautiful things. And that pivot point into surrender is often just sort of sitting with this concept of how do I feel? Like what emotions are common in my life experience and why? And often that leads to some maybe deeper pain or shame, right? And that pivots maybe someone into a place of surrender. And it's interesting, this is a bit of my life experience, and it sounds like it's what you're articulating. When you're in a cadence of surrender, an invitation usually comes to the surface. An invitation that seems crazy, that seems risky, and God wants you to step into that because that stimulates that relationship between him and you. And he's got you in a state of surrender, which he has a lot to work with. And then sanctification comes. And it's beautiful how that happens. And through that sanctification, often healing takes place. And that's really, that's here. What we're trying to do in mortality is heal and progress and become more like him. And that's a crucial thing. So I appreciate how you articulated just that, because we often think, well, feel your feelings, okay. And, trust God, have faith, okay. But, in that order, and it sort of makes it more pragmatic with how people can actually do that.
Yeah. And I think it can help you just get away from the formulaic part of it, right? Like, because man, if I'm not getting answers to my prayers, again, shame comes in and says, hey, well, just because you're doing it wrong. Like you're not worthy, or you're broken, or whatever. And so you go back to the formulas of, okay, like I have to make sure I'm saying enough prayers of gratitude. And I have to make sure that is there anything that I need to tell my bishop about that I haven't repented about? And all the pieces have to be in place. And I think, like all those are, again, I'm not saying that we should throw out all the stuff and not do the things, but,
and that's the paradox, right? Is that, and I hate to frame it that you do the things more than ever in that state, but you do the things in a different place because the things are important. The behaviors are important, but you have to be in kind of that right state, right? To do those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it's driven by, hey, you're not doing this well enough, or I would answer your prayer if you were different. Like that's just not how God works.
Yeah.
Like it just can't be how God works. I've come to settle in a place where when I'm not receiving answers to prayers, it's likely because God just loves me and trusts me, and that he's ready for whatever that journey looks like. And so I feel like if we change our prayers even a little bit, we're able to come at them in a way where like God almost has to answer our prayers. In that I'm going from, I'll just use this example because it's one that I experienced 100 times or more over the last 7 years of teaching seminary. Seniors would come up to me as they're getting close to the end of their senior year, this time, about this time in the year where they're trying to figure out college and missions and all the next things. And they go, man, like I have 2 or 3 options for college and God's not answering. He's not telling me things. So what am I doing wrong? I'm like, well, probably nothing. Like he asked you to ask him and you're asking him. So you're not doing anything wrong. What if he just wants you to choose? And if you instead make that choice and then just invite him into that choice, it's different, right? your prayer changes from tell me what college to go to, tell me what university to go to, tell me whether I need to go on a mission, to God, this is what I'm feeling. Again, going back to our feelings, this is what I'm feeling right now. This is the choice that's leading me to. Will you just walk this with me? Mm-hmm. Will you keep me safe? Will you help me meet the people I need to meet? Will you help me be the person that I want to be? And like, is God ever going to not answer that prayer? Like he's going to answer that prayer like 100% of the time. I'm pretty confident in saying that, which, you know, we're not 100% confident in God's answers to prayers a lot, but if we can change it, I think we can be way more confident in his answers to prayers, because we're just inviting him to be a part of our story, all the pieces, all the parts of our story. We're inviting him in and letting him be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really helpful, that example. Are there any other touch points with that youth experience, or as we discuss these principles, that would be worth mentioning? Or
I think just inviting as much authenticity as we can into that relationship with him. And I think as whether you are listening to this and you're a parent, you're a leader, whoever you are, I think modeling that authenticity is super important. Mm-hmm. Something that we try to show our kids when we're in the struggle, and especially when we're in the struggle with God, and like, this is what it looks like, and this is what it sounds like, and this is what it feels like. It feels heavy and it feels like wrestly. And so, man, when we have hard conversations or hard things that we're approaching as a family, like, we don't do that behind closed doors. I want my kids to see that we're allowed to cry to God and let him know how it feels. And we're allowed to be scared about the next steps and be terrified of them. As a career change when you have 5 kids is scary. Mm-hmm. And my kids know every step of the way what that's been like. Mm-hmm. My, as I've made that transition, and I've been, meeting with more and more people, I go home and my 12-year-old asks me almost every day, how many clients did you see today, Dad? How many people you helping? And, it's gone from 2 or 3 at the beginning of the journey to, 6 or 7 every day. And it's so cool. And he lights up and is excited. Like, sometimes, at the beginning of that journey, I'd get home and he'd say, how many people did you see? And I'm, hey, just 1 today, bud. And it's hard, and I'm scared, that this isn't going to work. And I hate that you're asking me this question every day, but I'm going to show up in that, because I want you to see that, that this is hard and scary. And I'm real. Like you're real. And like, that way, when you have your thing that you're walking into that's scary, you feel like you can come to me about it, and I'm going to let you be real with it. Mm-hmm. And we can involve God in the authenticity of it.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I think of, like, you hear of certain people describe their childhood of like, we were poor, but I never knew I was poor, which obviously there's some good things of that, of, there's more than money that makes happiness. And when somebody raises a child and they don't know they're poor, but they're still happy, that's a beautiful thing. But at the same time, sometimes we don't want our children to be aware of the struggles of mortality. And of course, in all things, there's extremes that are unhealthy to take them to, but to invite your whole family into something like that, that goes a long way. When it's less, when they grow up and suddenly they're facing similar problems, they don't think, I think I broke it. Like, mom and dad didn't have this problem or something, Yeah. And it really, and just help them witness the wrestle, and then be a part of the wrestle, and witness the miracles. And then the miracles are more obvious with that contrast, so. And
honestly, that's what a lot of the college age kids that I meet with are wrestling with. They're like 20 years old, and they're like, why don't I have everything figured out?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're 20. Like you need space for this. Like I'm in the midst of a career change at 37. Uh-huh. Like, it's okay to not have it all figured out at 20. But because they've never seen the wrestle, they've never seen the struggle. They just figure, hey, my parents have had it all figured out my whole life. And so before I can jump into a major, or jump into a career, or jump into a relationship, or have children, I have to have everything figured out. Where I think, man, again, the more authenticity we invite into that, the more we're inviting shame to not be a part of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's really
inviting
helpful.
that to leave.
And I think, going back to that, like a youth church setting of having the leader, again, this isn't about like just bearing all your dirty laundry and all the ugly dynamics, but for a youth leader to say something, the adult youth leader, my son's away at college. This week I'm just feeling really nervous about him, and, he's not in the church, or, I pray for him, but I just constantly worry that I'm going to get that phone call, or, and so if you all just pray for me, I'm just sort of sitting in that, I'm feeling that, right? And that's okay,
Yeah.
just feel it.
Yeah. Totally okay, right? Like there's, and man, like if we're not doing this whole gospel thing for that, then what are we doing it for?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's where we need God to show up. That's when we need God to show up. And that's his whole thing. Like, and so if we're going to pretend that we don't need it and just, like we're kind of inviting him not to be a part of it, which, man, like that's not how I want to walk that thing.
Yeah,
for sure.
If somebody wants to learn more about you and check out what you do and how you help youth, where would you send them?
So I work in Sandy, Utah at a clinic called Accepted. So you can find me there. The easiest way to reach me would be braedenjensen.com. We can probably
we'll
get you a link and have you figure it out. You can, like, my phone number is there, my contact info's there. Like you can get me there. You're welcome to follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, you're active on
I
there.
Try to be, I go in waves of being active on Instagram. But I try to be there, and I'd love for you to follow me. And I share as much as I can there, but I also have a lot of people reach out to me through Instagram and say, hey, like, this sounds awesome. Please, I want more. So you're welcome to reach out to me there as well. And that'd be great. Yeah, that's how you can reach me.
Well, Braeden, this has been awesome. Any other point, principle, concept, story?
I feel pretty good about it. I think just one of I was giving a talk, probably last year in my ward, and just had a thought come to me. It's been one of my favorite things that I've just kind of clung on to help me continue forward in this and not fall back into those, the shame inviting and the checkbox checking pattern. And that's that, man, I feel like 95% of what I know about Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ, I've learned in the last 5 years of my life. And before, that would maybe make me really discouraged. Like, what on earth am I doing for the first 30 something years of my life, where I'm not learning about him? But really, that just gives me a ton of hope, because if I project that forward, hopefully in 5 years from now, what I know now about God is only 5% of what I know in 5 years, and I just want to continue to experience him and his fullness and his, how he shows up and who he is and how he is. Like, I want to just continue peeling back all the layers of that relationship and allowing that to change me as I go. And so I'm okay that 95% of what I've learned about God has happened in the last 5 years, because that means in the next 5 years, I get to repeat that and do it again. I think that's where a lot of shame comes from, is when we're feeling something like lonely, and the voice in our head, that inner critic voice, says, hey, well, if you're lonely, just figure it out, do something different. Yeah. The way you're doing things is wrong if you're feeling lonely. And like, what if that's not the case? What if you're actually just allowed to feel lonely sometimes? Yeah. And like, what a game changer that is, to just be like, oh, like, I'm okay to be sad. I'm okay to feel betrayed. I'm okay to be lonely, and not have to fix it immediately, but to feel it enough to know this is how I can fix it. Yeah. Right. And so being able to facilitate that in a Sunday setting is challenging, and it can be a little bit harder with a group, right? I'm doing a lot of stuff one-on-one right now, but having a group just also just allows for some additional magic to happen too, if you can just invite that in.